It was a quiet night in Harrison County, a small suburban town in the United States, a place where everyone knew each other and crime seemed like a distant concept. But that was before the first body was found. On the evening of June 14, 1997, the peaceful streets of Harrison were shattered when the lifeless body of Sarah Williams, a 29-year-old schoolteacher, was discovered in her home. The scene was horrific. Sarah had been strangled, her neck marked by deep handprint-like bruises, a gruesome testament to the violent struggle she must have endured. What made the murder even more chilling was the fact that there were no signs of forced entry. The windows were locked, the doors secured. It was as if the killer had walked in, unnoticed, and executed his crime without a sound. Neighbors hadn't heard anything, and the house was eerily silent. Sarah had been a beloved figure in the community, a woman who spent her days teaching young minds and her nights attending town meetings. No one could imagine why she would have been targeted. There were no obvious enemies, no disputes, no suspicious acquaintances. But the eerie truth was starting to emerge. The killer had left a signature. Around Sarah's neck was a strangulation pattern unlike any other, with a chilling precision. Whoever had done this knew exactly how to inflict pain without leaving any trace. As the weeks passed, fear settled in like a heavy fog over the town. People locked their doors at night, checked the locks on their windows twice, and whispered about who could be behind such a monstrous act. But nothing prepared the community for what would come next. On July 25th, just over a month after Sarah's death, Emily Thompson, the 32-year-old librarian, was found dead in her home. She had been strangled, just like Sarah, with no signs of struggle. The only difference was the mark on her neck. It was identical to the one on Sarah's. The strangulation was deliberate, almost ritualistic. This time, the police were on edge. They feared that Harrison's quiet streets were no longer safe. The town that once felt like a sanctuary now felt like a hunting ground. What started as a tragic accident quickly turned into a terrifying pattern. There was a killer among them, and his strikes were getting more calculated. Emily had also been well-liked, with no known enemies, no drama in her life. Just like Sarah, she had no reason to die. Detective Mark Hunter, a seasoned investigator with over 15 years on the force, was called to the case. Hunter was no stranger to grisly crimes, but something about this case felt different. The eerie nature of the murders, the coldness of the killer, and the complete lack of leads were making this one of the most perplexing cases of his career. Hunter began by interviewing everyone connected to Emily and Sarah. Friends, family, co-workers, anyone who might shed light on their lives, looking for a clue, any clue that could point to a suspect. But everything came back empty. There were no enemies, no lovers scorned, no business dealings gone wrong. Then, just days after Emily's death, a chilling discovery was made. A handwritten note was found at the crime scene. It was a taunting message. "I am watching. You will never catch me." The handwriting was sloppy, but it carried an unsettling weight. It was clear the killer was mocking the investigators. But it didn't stop there. Days later, a similar note was found in a local post office, claiming that he would never be found. Hunter was beginning to feel the pressure. The town was on edge, and now the killer seemed to be watching him too. It wasn't just the victims who were being tormented, it was the entire town. The fear, the paranoia, and the disturbing sense of helplessness were beginning to consume everyone. The fear reached its peak when, on September 1st, just weeks after Emily's death, the third victim was discovered. Jessica Evans, a 28-year-old reporter, had been covering the murders for the local newspaper. She had been investigating Sarah and Emily's deaths, trying to uncover any hidden connections. But now, Jessica was dead, strangled in her apartment in the same precise manner as the previous victims. This time, there was a new twist. The police found a strange symbol carved into the wall of her bedroom, directly above her bed. A symbol that had never been seen before. Hunter knew they were dealing with someone who was both methodical and unpredictable. The killer had escalated his game. He wasn't just killing innocent women. He was now targeting those trying to uncover the truth. Was he trying to send a message to the entire town, or was he taunting the investigators? Hunter found himself in the midst of a nightmare. He had no answers, no leads, no suspect. Just the horrifying realization that the Midnight Strangler was closer than ever. Desperation had begun to take its toll. Detective Hunter spent sleepless nights poring over evidence, trying to piece together the clues. Then, a breakthrough came. A strange theory started to form. Perhaps the killer was someone who knew the victims intimately, someone close to the community. But how could he have slipped past every security measure without leaving a trace? Hunter set up a plan. He would use a decoy, a young woman who would pretend to be alone at night, baiting the killer into striking once again. Hunter's plan was risky, but it was the only way they might get a solid lead. Hours passed with no sign of the killer. The night grew longer, and the tension was palpable. Just as Hunter began to think the killer wouldn't show, he saw him. A shadowy figure appeared, lurking near the house. His heart raced as the figure slipped inside the front door, unnoticed. Hunter followed, but the figure was gone before he could confront him. It was too late. The killer had slipped into the darkness again. He was always one step ahead. Months passed, and still, the Midnight Strangler remained elusive. Despite Hunter's relentless pursuit, the case went cold. The fear that had once gripped the town slowly faded, but the scars remained. The killer's signature, his taunting messages, and the brutal murders left a lasting impact on everyone who lived through it. Then, just as hope seemed lost, Detective Hunter received a letter, postmarked from an unknown location. The envelope contained a drawing of a shadowy figure with glowing eyes. Below the drawing, the killer's final words, "You'll never find me. I am watching. I am everywhere." Hunter stood frozen, the hairs on his neck standing up. He could feel the weight of those words in his chest. He looked out the window, and there, across the street, was a figure standing in the shadows, watching him. But when he blinked, the figure was gone. The Midnight Strangler had left his mark on the town, but his identity remained a mystery. The killer was still out there, and the investigation had come to a standstill. The town was left to wonder if they would ever get closure, or if the killer would continue to lurk in the shadows. And so, the case of the Midnight Strangler remains one of the most chilling, unsolved crimes in history, leaving behind a legacy of terror that refuses to fade.